The order moved at the speed of light. It traveled through relay stations and communication buoys, jumping from system to system, like a spark running along a wire. It carried a code that had not been used since the last Great War, 53 years ago. The code had a simple name. It was called Condition Black. Every human military officer in the galaxy knew what Condition Black meant. It meant that humanity was under attack. Not a small fight, not a border argument, a full-scale invasion. And it meant one thing above all else. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon was to wake up and prepare for war. Admiral Yuna stood on the bridge of the ISS Iron Tide and watched the code go out. She was 51 years old, with short black hair and a scar that ran from her left ear to her jaw. She had gotten that scar during a pirate raid 15 years ago. She had killed the pirate who gave it to her with her bare hands. People told that story in whispers. The Iron Tide was a monster of a ship. It was 3 kilometers long, covered in thick armor, and carrying enough weapons to burn a small moon. It had been built in secret, in a shipyard hidden inside an asteroid belt near Jupiter. The galaxy did not know it existed. That was on purpose. "Ma'am," said her communications officer, a young man named Dong Ho. "Condition Black has been received by all 12 sector commands. Responses are coming in." "Put them on screen," Yuna said. One by one, the faces of fleet commanders appeared on the massive display. They were scattered across human space, commanding ships in different systems, different sectors. But they all had the same look in their eyes. They had heard the distress signal from Outpost Hana. They had heard Teiho's last words, and they were angry. The first to speak was Captain June, commander of the 3rd Strike Fleet. He was a young man, only 34, with a sharp face and quick eyes. His fleet was stationed near the Kepler Belt, a string of mining colonies that supplied raw materials to the inner worlds. He had 12 warships under his command, small but fast. "Admiral, my fleet is powered up and ready to move. Give me coordinates and we fly," June said. His voice was calm, but his hands were tight fists at his sides. Next was Captain Unbi, commander of the 7th Heavy Fleet. She was older than June, with gray streaks in her tied-back hair, and a voice that sounded like gravel. Her fleet had 8 heavy cruisers, each one built like a fortress with engines. "7th Heavy is loading weapons now," she said. "We can be at the rally point in 6 days." Then came Captain Hyun, commander of the Silent Fleet, the Stealth Division. His ships had no names, only numbers. They did not appear on any public record. Hyun himself was a ghost. He rarely spoke, and when he did, people listened. "We are already moving," Hyun said. That was all. His screen went dark. One by one, every fleet commander reported in. In total, the Armada would number over 500 warships, ranging from small, fast destroyers to massive battleships that could crack a planet's crust. It was the largest military force humanity had ever gathered in one place. But there was a problem. They were scattered across 12 different star systems. Bringing them together would take time. And time was something the people of Outpost Hana did not have. Yuna knew this. She felt the weight of it pressing down on her chest. But she did not let it show. She never did. "All fleet commanders," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Rally point is the Nara system, grid 774. I want every ship there in 5 days. Not 6, not 7, 5. Push your engines past their limits if you have to. We move together, and we move fast." The screens went dark one by one as the commanders went to work. In the engine room of the Iron Tide, Chief Engineer Subin was already running. She was a small woman with oil-stained hands and wild hair that she kept tied in a messy knot on top of her head. She had been an engineer since she was 19, and there was not a machine in the galaxy she could not fix, break, or make more dangerous. "Listen up," She shouted to her team of 60 engineers. "We just went to condition black. That means I need every weapon on this ship online and ready. And I mean every weapon, including the ones in Storage Bay 14. Her second engineer, a big man named Deho, looked at her with wide eyes. "Bay 14? Subin, those weapons are locked down. They are classified. Command said we are never supposed to—" "Command just told us to wake the Armada," Subin said, cutting him off. "That means the rules have changed. Open Bay 14. Subin hesitated, then nodded. He took a keycard from around his neck and walked to a heavy metal door at the back of the engine room. He swiped the card. The door hissed open. Inside the bay were rows of long black missiles sitting on metal racks. They did not look special from the outside, but everyone in that room knew what they were. They were called Reapers, weapons that the Galactic Council had banned over 100 years ago. They were designed to punch through any shield, any armor, any defense. When a Reaper hit a ship, it did not just destroy it. It turned the ship and everything inside it into dust. Humans had built them anyway. They had built them quietly, stored them carefully, and told no one. Because humans remembered something that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Peace was not forever. And when peace ended, you needed teeth. Subin ran her hand along one of the missiles. "Hello, beautiful. Time to wake up." While the Armada gathered, the Velic were celebrating. On the bridge of his flagship, Overlord Dreth received reports from his ground forces. They had landed on the colony below Outpost Hana and taken control of the surface. The underground shelters were holding, and the humans inside were refusing to come out. But Dreth was not worried. They would starve eventually. His second-in-command, Preth, brought him a datapad. "Overlord, our listening stations have picked up a large number of human transmissions. They are coming from multiple systems." Dreth took the pad and looked at it. The screen showed dozens of communication signals bouncing between human systems. "Can we read them?" he asked. "No, Overlord. They are encrypted with a code we have never seen before." Dreth frowned. The Velic had spent decades studying human communication systems. They could read most of their military codes. It was layered, complex, and it changed every few seconds. "What do you think it means?" Preth asked. Dreth set the pad down. "It means they are scared. They are talking to each other, trying to figure out what to do. It is panic, Preth. Nothing more." Preth was not so sure. He had studied humans more carefully than most Velic. He had read their history, the wars they had fought on their own world, the things they had done to each other long before they reached the stars. He had read about their world wars, their revolutions, their long history of violence and survival. It had given him nightmares. "Overlord," Preth said carefully, "perhaps we should send scouts to the nearby systems, just to be safe." Dreth laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "Safe? From what? The nearest human fleet is weeks away. We have 300 ships here, and more coming from the homeworld. The humans have no one to send. Their military is spread across 100 systems. They cannot gather a force large enough to challenge us in time." He leaned back in his chair. "This sector is ours, Preth. By the time the humans figure out what happened, we will have fortified this entire region. They will have no choice but to accept it." Preth nodded, but he did not smile. Something in those transmissions bothered him. They were too organized, too fast, too many, all at once. It did not look like panic to him. It looked like something else. It looked like coordination. But he kept his mouth shut. The Overlord had spoken, and in the Velic Empire you did not question the Overlord. Far away, in the Nara system, the first ships of the Armada began to arrive. Captain June was the first, bringing his 12 fast ships out of faster-than-light travel in a tight, perfect formation. He looked out his window at the empty space around him and felt the weight of what was coming. His communications officer looked at him. "Sir, we are the first ones here." "We will not be the last," June said. Start scanning for more arrivals, and get me a tactical map of the HANA system. I want to know every rock, every moon, every shadow where a ship can hide. Over the next 3 days, the Nara system filled with ships. They came in groups and alone. Heavy cruisers, fast destroyers, carriers loaded with fighter craft, support ships carrying supplies and ammunition. Captain Unbi arrived with her 8 heavy cruisers, each one looking like a metal mountain with engines. Captain Hyan's stealth ships arrived without anyone seeing them come. They were simply there one moment, invisible the next. And then, on the 5th day, the Iron Tide arrived. It came out of faster-than-light travel, like a god stepping out of the darkness. 3 kilometers of black armor and glowing engines, surrounded by a personal escort of 20 warships. Every ship in the system turned to look at it. Some of the younger officers had never seen it before. They stared in silence. Admiral Yuna opened a channel to the entire fleet. Her voice reached every ship, every crew member, every soldier waiting in the Nara system. This is Admiral Yuna. You all know why we are here. The Velik attacked our people. They destroyed our station. They are sitting on our colony, thinking they have won. They think we are weak. They think we are slow. They think this war is already over. She paused. The silence was heavy. They are about to learn what happens when you make a Deathworlder angry. All ships, form up. We move at dawn. 500 warships turned as one and pointed their bows toward the HANA system. The engines glowed bright in the darkness. The storm was ready. The Velik had placed a defensive line of 40 ships at the edge of the HANA system. They floated in a wide arc, their sensors watching the darkness of space for any sign of movement. The captains of those ships were confident. They had good weapons, strong shields, and the full might of the Velik Empire behind them. They believed that if the humans came, they would see this line and turn back. That was what any sensible species would do. They did not understand humans at all. Captain June sat in the command chair of his ship, the ISS Blade. It was a fast destroyer, built for speed and sharp attacks. His crew of 120 people moved quietly around the bridge, checking systems, loading weapons, and running final calculations. Nobody spoke louder than a whisper. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. June studied the tactical display in front of him. The Velik defensive line was spread out across thousands of kilometers. They were arranged in a standard formation, evenly spaced, good coverage, textbook positioning. The kind of formation that worked well against most species in the galaxy. But humans did not fight like most species in the galaxy. Status of the stealth group? June asked quietly. His tactical officer, a woman named Sua, checked her screen. Captain Hyun reports his ships are in position. They passed through the Velik line 2 hours ago without being detected. They are now behind the enemy formation, waiting for the signal. June allowed himself a small smile. Hyun was a ghost. His ships were fitted with technology that bent light and absorbed sensor signals. They could fly close enough to an enemy ship to read the name on its hull, and the enemy would never know they were there. He had taken 20 stealth ships right through the Velik defensive line, and not a single alarm had gone off. And the main fleet? June asked. Admiral Yuna is holding position at the system's edge. She is waiting for us to begin. June nodded. The plan was simple, as the best plans always were. June's fast ships would attack the Velik line from the front, hard and loud. While the Velik focused on him, Hyun's stealth ships would attack from behind. And when the line broke, not if, but when, Yuna and the main fleet would pour through the gap like a river through a broken wall. All ships, June said into his communicator. This is Captain June. We are going in. Remember your training. Stay fast, stay tight, and do not stop moving. The moment you stop, you die. We are the tip of the arrow. Let us make it sharp. 12 destroyers leaped forward. Their engines burned bright blue as they accelerated to attack speed. They came out of the darkness like a pack of wolves, aimed straight at the center of the Velic line. On the Velic defensive ship Vortan, the sensor officer suddenly sat up straight. "Commander, I am reading 12 human warships approaching at high speed. They are coming directly at us." The Velic commander of the defensive line, a tall officer named Kelth, stood up and looked at the screen. 12 ships. He had 40. He almost laughed. 12? They send 12 ships against 40? He shook his head. "These humans are more foolish than I thought. All ships, target the incoming formation. Destroy them." 40 Velic ships turned their weapons toward June's fleet and opened fire. The space between them filled with bright green energy blasts, each one powerful enough to melt through a ship's hull. It was a wall of fire, a storm of destruction that nothing should have been able to fly through. June's ships flew through it. The human destroyers did not fly in straight lines. They twisted, rolled, and danced between the energy blasts with a speed that the Velic targeting systems could not follow. Human pilots were different from other species. They had faster reflexes, better hand-eye coordination, and a willingness to push their bodies to limits that would kill most aliens. They pulled turns that created forces of 8 or 9 times normal gravity, forces that would make a Velic's bones snap like dry sticks. The human pilots grunted and groaned under the pressure, their vision going gray at the edges, but they did not stop. "Hold formation," June shouted, his teeth pressed together against the crushing force of a sharp turn. "Fire at will." The 12 destroyers opened up with everything they had. Human weapons were different from Velic weapons. The Velic used energy blasts, clean, elegant, and precise. Humans used kinetic rounds, chunks of heavy metal fired at a fraction of the speed of light. There was nothing elegant about them. They were brutal, simple, and terrifyingly effective. The first round hit a Velic cruiser's shield. The shield held for exactly 1.3 seconds. Then the second round hit the same spot, and the third. The shield shattered like glass hit by a hammer, and the fourth round punched straight through the hull. The Velic cruiser broke in half, spilling air and bodies into the cold vacuum of space. Kelth stared at his screen in shock. He had lost a ship in less than 4 seconds. "How?" he started to say. Then Hune struck from behind. 20 stealth ships appeared out of nothing. One moment there was empty space behind the Velic line. The next moment there were 20 human warships, and every one of them was already firing. The Velic ships on the back of the formation had their shields pointed forward, toward June's attack. Their rears were unprotected. Hyun's ships tore into them without mercy. Silent, precise, and deadly, they targeted engines first, then weapon systems, then bridges. 5 Velic ships died before anyone on the defensive line even realized what was happening. Kelth's ship rocked as something hit it from behind. Alarms screamed. His officers shouted over each other, trying to figure out where the new attack was coming from. "They are behind us," someone screamed. "Human ships behind us! Where did they come from?" "That is impossible," Kelth shouted. "Nothing passed through our line. We would have seen them." But his sensors told a different story. 20 human ships were behind him, and 12 more were in front of him, and his formation was falling apart. Ships were turning in different directions, trying to face both threats at once, crashing into each other's firing lanes. The beautiful textbook formation had turned into chaos in less than 2 minutes. June saw the confusion and pushed harder. "All ships, full attack, break their line." His 12 destroyers accelerated again, diving straight into the gaps that were opening in the Velic formation. They passed between enemy ships at speeds that no sane pilot would attempt, firing as they went. Explosions bloomed on both sides like deadly flowers. On the ISS Blade, Suwa gripped her console as the ship shook from a near miss. "Captain, we have a gap. The center of their line is open." "Send the signal to Admiral Yuna," June said. The door is open. Far behind him, on the bridge of the Iron Tide, Admiral Yuna received the message. She had been standing perfectly still, watching the battle on the tactical display, her face showing nothing. But inside, her heart was beating like a war drum. The line is broken, Dongho reported. Captain June has opened a path. Yuna looked at the display one last time. Then she spoke. All ships advance. Full speed. Take us through. 500 warships surged forward. The sight of it on any sensor screen would have been terrifying. A wall of metal and fire stretching across thousands of kilometers, moving with the speed and purpose of an avalanche. The smaller ships led the way, racing through the gap that June had torn open. The heavy cruisers came next, their massive guns already turning toward the remaining Velic ships on either side. And at the center, like the beating heart of a metal giant, the Iron Tide pushed through. Kelf saw them coming on his screen. His face went pale, a deep blue color that meant terror for a Velic. 300 ships, he had been told, the humans did not have. 300 ships that should have been scattered across 100 systems. 300 ships that were now pouring through his broken line like a flood through a cracked dam. He did not even have time to send a warning. Captain Unbi's heavy cruiser, the ISS Mountain, fired a single broadside as it passed his ship. 16 kinetic rounds hit the Vortan at the same time. The ship did not break apart. It simply stopped existing. Of the 40 Velic ships that had formed the defensive line, 31 were destroyed in the first 15 minutes of the battle. The remaining 9 tried to run. Hyun's stealth ships caught 6 of them before they could jump to faster-than-light speed. The last 3 escaped, burning their engines as hard as they could, racing back toward the main Velic fleet with a message that would change the entire war. The humans were here, and they were not afraid. On the bridge of the blade, June let out a long breath. His hands were shaking. The adrenaline was still rushing through his body, making his heart pound and his vision sharp. He looked at the battlefield, the broken Velic ships, the expanding clouds of debris, the bodies floating in the darkness. Casualties? He asked quietly. Suwa checked her reports. We lost 1 destroyer, sir. The ISS Arrow. All hands. And 3 other ships have heavy damage, but are still flying. 1 ship. 120 people. June closed his eyes for a moment, and remembered the captain of the Arrow, a quiet man named Sung-ho, who liked to play guitar in the mess hall. Note their names, June said. Every single one. We will remember them. Then he opened his eyes and looked forward. Ahead of them, deeper in the Hana system, the main Velic fleet was waiting. 300 ships, with Overlord Dreth at their center. The real fight had not even begun. Suwa said, Signal from Admiral Yuna, sir. June pressed the button. Yuna's voice filled the bridge, calm and cold as deep space. Well done, Captain. Now form up with the fleet. The first wall is down, but there is a bigger one ahead, and we are going to tear it down too. June straightened in his chair. Yes, Admiral, with pleasure. The Armada reformed and pushed deeper into the system. Behind them, the wreckage of the Velic defensive line drifted in silence. Ahead of them, the stars burned. And somewhere in the darkness, Overlord Dreth was finally beginning to realize that he had made a terrible mistake. The 3 surviving Velic ships from the defensive line reached Overlord Dreth's flagship in a state of ruin. Their hulls were scorched, their shields were gone, and their crews were shaking. The captain of the lead ship could barely speak. When he finally managed to give his report, the bridge of the Velic flagship fell completely silent. 500 ships, the captain said, his voice hollow. The humans brought 500 warships. They broke our line in 15 minutes. They have weapons we have never seen. They move faster than our targeting systems can track. Commander Kelth is dead. The defensive line is gone. Overlord Dreth sat in his chair and said nothing for a long time. His 4 eyes blinked slowly, one pair at a time. The smile that had been on his face for days was gone. In its place was something that the officers around him had never seen before. Uncertainty. Preth, his second-in-command, stepped forward. "Overlord, I told you." "Silence," Dreth said. His voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut stone. He stared at the tactical display, watching the massive cloud of red dots, the human armada, moving steadily toward his position. 500 ships. He had 300. The numbers alone were bad, but it was not just the numbers that worried him. It was the speed. The humans had gathered this fleet in 5 days. 5 days. That should have been impossible. He stood up slowly. "Recall all ground forces from the colony surface. Every soldier, every vehicle, every shuttle. I want them back on the ships." Preth hesitated. "Overlord, if we pull our forces from the surface, we lose control of the colony. If we do not pull them back, we lose them entirely," Dreth snapped. "The colony means nothing if we lose this fleet, and we are about to fight for our lives. Arrange the fleet in a sphere formation around the gas giant. Use the planet's gravity well to anchor our position. Make them come to us." It was a defensive move, and everyone on the bridge knew it. The Velic Empire did not play defense. They attacked. They conquered. They had not fought a defensive battle in over 200 years. But Dreth was not a fool. He could read numbers, and the numbers said he was in trouble. The Velic fleet pulled back and arranged itself in a massive sphere around the pale blue gas giant. 300 ships, shields linked together, weapons pointing outward in every direction. It was a strong position. The gas giant's gravity would make it hard for the humans to maneuver, and the linked shields would be much harder to break than individual ones. On the Iron Tide, Admiral Yuna studied the Velic formation with narrow eyes. She stood at the center of a holographic tactical display, a 3-dimensional map of the entire battle area floating in the air around her. Her officers stood at their stations, waiting for orders. "They have formed the sphere," said Hana, the tactical officer. She was a young woman with sharp cheekbones and even sharper eyes. She had graduated first in her class at the Naval Academy and had been assigned to the Iron Tide because she was the best tactical mind in the fleet. She tapped the display, and the Velic formation rotated slowly in the air. Linked shields, overlapping fire zones. If we attack from any single direction, we will take heavy losses. "Then we do not attack from a single direction," Yuna said. She touched the display, and the human fleet appeared as blue dots surrounding the Velic sphere. Hana, split the fleet into 5 attack groups. Group 1, Captain Jun's fast ships, will approach from above the plane. Group 2, Captain Unbi's heavy cruisers, will come from below. Groups 3, 4, and 5 will spread around the equator at equal intervals. Captain Hyun's stealth ships will move independently and strike targets of opportunity. Hana nodded, her fingers already flying across the console. That will stretch their defenses thin. They will not be able to concentrate fire on any one group without exposing themselves to the others. "That is the idea," Yuna said. She paused and looked at the display again. "And Hana?" "Yes, Admiral?" "Load the Reapers." A hush fell over the bridge. Everyone knew what the Reapers were. Everyone knew they were banned, and everyone knew that none of that mattered anymore. Hana did not hesitate. Loading Reapers into all forward launch tubes, ready in 4 minutes. Yuna opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Yuna. We are about to engage the main Velic fleet. They are dug in, and they are waiting for us. They think their formation will save them. They think their shields will hold. They are wrong." She paused, letting the words settle. "We did not travel across the stars to be stopped by a wall of scared aliens hiding behind a gas giant. We are here for the people of Outpost Hana. We are here for the 12,000 men, women, and children trapped in shelters beneath the ground." We are here because no one attacks our people and walks away. Every ship, every crew, you know what to do. Make them remember this day forever. The Armada broke into 5 groups and moved. From every direction, human warships closed in on the Velic sphere, like the fingers of a fist, closing around a throat. Dreth watched them come. His jaw tightened. All ships, fire at will. Destroy everything that moves. The Battle of Hana began. The Velic opened fire first. 300 ships unleashed their weapons at the same moment, filling the space around the gas giant with a storm of green energy. The light was so bright that the sensors on the human ships had to adjust to keep from being blinded. But the human ships were not where the Velic expected them to be. June's fast destroyers dove from above, screaming down at impossible angles, their engines pushing them faster than the Velic targeting computers could calculate. They hit the top of the sphere and punched through, shattering linked shields with concentrated kinetic fire. At the same time, Unbi's heavy cruisers rose from below. They were slower than June's ships, but infinitely more powerful. Each cruiser carried 48 main guns, and they fired them all at once. The bottom of the Velic sphere lit up with explosions. 6 Velic ships died in the first volley before they could even turn their weapons downward. The 3 equatorial groups attacked next, slamming into the sides of the sphere from 3 different angles. The Velic commanders screamed orders at each other, trying to redirect shields, trying to concentrate fire, trying to hold the formation together. But there were too many attacks from too many directions. The sphere began to break apart. And then the Reapers came. The Iron Tide fired 12 Reapers in a single volley. The missiles were not fast. They did not need to be. They were smart. Each one carried an advanced targeting system that could dodge defensive fire, change direction, and find the weakest point in any shield. They moved through the battlefield like living things, weaving between ships and explosions. The first Reaper hit a Velic battleship, one of the largest ships in their fleet. The missile passed through the shield as if it did not exist. It punched through the outer hull, through the inner hull, through 3 decks of crew quarters, and into the reactor core. The explosion that followed was blinding. The battleship simply vanished, replaced by an expanding ball of white fire that consumed 2 nearby ships as well. More Reapers found their targets. Velic cruisers, destroyers, and carriers died one after another. Each death was violent and total. There was no slow breaking apart, no time to evacuate, just light, heat, and silence. On the Velic flagship, Preth was screaming, "Overlord, we have lost 47 ships. Our formation is collapsing. What are those weapons? Our shields do nothing." Dreth gripped the arms of his chair so hard that his claws dug into the metal. He had never seen anything like this. The Velic had fought dozens of species across the galaxy, and none of them had weapons that could simply ignore shields. It was not supposed to be possible. "What are they?" he whispered. No one had an answer. Hana, aboard the Iron Tide, coordinated the attack with a calm precision that amazed everyone who watched her work. She moved fleet groups like chess pieces, directing fire, finding gaps in the Velic formation, and exploiting every weakness. When a group of Velic ships tried to concentrate on June's destroyers, she redirected Unbi's cruisers to hit them from behind. When a Velic carrier tried to launch fighter craft, she sent Hune's stealth ships to destroy it before a single fighter could leave the hangar. She did not shout. She did not panic. She simply looked at the battle and saw what needed to happen, like a musician reading a piece of sheet music and knowing exactly which note came next. Group 3, shift fire to coordinates 719. Group 5, cover Captain June's withdrawal from Sector 4. Stealth Group, there is a damaged carrier trying to retreat at bearing 220. Finish it. Every order was followed. Every move worked. The Velic fleet was being taken apart piece by piece. Dreth finally understood. This was not a battle. The humans had not come to fight. They had come to destroy. Every move they made was calculated. Every attack was coordinated. They fought as a single mind, 500 ships moving together like one living creature with one purpose: to end the Velic fleet. "Overlord," Press shouted, "we must retreat. We have lost over 100 ships. If we stay here, we will all die." Dreth looked at his tactical display. The beautiful sphere formation was gone. His ships were scattered, burning, running. The gas giant behind them glowed with the light of 100 explosions. The humans were everywhere. He closed his 4 eyes and made the hardest decision of his life. "All ships," he said, his voice breaking. "Retreat. Full retreat. Jump to faster than light as soon as you can. Head for the homeworld." The Velic ships that could still move turned and ran. They powered up their faster-than-light drives and jumped away, one by one, leaving behind the burning wreckage of their defeated fleet. Of the 300 ships that had formed the sphere, fewer than 140 escaped. The rest were destroyed, disabled, or captured. Dreth's flagship was one of the last to jump. As the stars stretched and the ship entered faster-than-light travel, he looked back at the tactical display one final time. The Hana system was filled with blue dots, human ships, and the scattered remains of his fleet. He had come here to conquer. He was leaving in ruins. On the Iron Tide, Admiral Yuna watched the last Velic ships disappear. The bridge was quiet. Her officers looked at each other, hardly believing what had just happened. They had won. The Velic fleet, the pride of one of the oldest empires in the galaxy, had been broken and driven away. She turned to Hana. "How quickly can we get rescue teams to the colony surface?" Hana checked her console. 2 hours, Admiral." "Make it 1. There are 12,000 people down there who have been waiting long enough." She looked out the window at the pale blue gas giant, now surrounded by the wreckage of a defeated empire. The battle was over, but the war, and what came after, was just beginning. The rescue shuttles touched down on the colony surface as the last fires in the sky faded to smoke. The ground was scarred with craters and burn marks from the Velic occupation. Buildings had been knocked down. Roads had been cracked apart by heavy alien vehicles. The fields that the colonists had spent years growing were trampled and dead, but the underground shelters had held. The first shuttle landed near the main shelter entrance, and a team of medics and soldiers rushed out. Leading them was a young medic named Jian, a woman with steady hands and kind eyes, who had volunteered for the first rescue team without hesitation. She ran to the heavy metal doors of the shelter and pressed the communication panel. "This is the Earth Defense Force," she said, her voice clear and warm. "The Velic are gone. You are safe. We are here to help. Please open the doors." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then there was a grinding sound of old locks turning. The heavy doors cracked open, and a thin strip of light fell on the face of Governor Miso. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red, and her clothes were dirty. She had not slept in days. Behind her, in the dim light of the shelter, hundreds of faces stared out. Men, women, children, all of them tired, scared, and hungry. Miso looked at Jian, then past her at the sky. She saw the trails of human ships moving overhead, and the distant glint of the Iron Tide in orbit. Her lip trembled. "You came," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Jian smiled gently. "Of course we came." Miso put her hand over her mouth and closed her eyes. Tears ran down her cheeks. Then she straightened up, wiped her face, and turned back to her people. "It is over," she said loudly. "The fleet is here. We are safe." The sound that came from inside the shelter was something Jian would never forget. It started as a murmur, then grew into a wave of crying, laughing, and shouting. People hugged each other. Children ran toward the open doors, reaching for the sunlight. An old man fell to his knees and pressed his hands to the ground. A mother held her baby up to the sky, as if showing the child that the world was still there. Gion's team moved in quickly, handing out water, food, and medical supplies. They checked people for injuries, treated the sick, and wrapped blankets around the children. The soldiers formed a perimeter, but there was nothing to guard against. The Velik were gone, and the only sounds on the surface now were human voices. Deep in the shelter, they found Commander Teho. He was alive, but barely. When the station had fallen, the explosion had thrown him through a wall and into an emergency pod. The pod had launched automatically and crashed on the colony's surface. Miso's people had found him in the wreckage and pulled him out. He had a broken arm, 3 cracked ribs, burns on his back, and a deep cut across his forehead. But he was breathing. Gion knelt beside him. He was lying on a makeshift bed, his eyes half open. He looked at her uniform and tried to sit up. "Stay down, Commander," Gion said softly. "You have done enough." "The signal," he whispered. "Did it reach?" "It reached. The entire armada came, Commander. 500 ships. The Velik fleet is destroyed." Teho closed his eyes. A single tear rolled down the side of his face and disappeared into his gray hair. He did not speak. He did not need to. He had done what he set out to do. He had bought them time. Admiral Yuna came down to the surface the next morning. She arrived without ceremony, stepping off a small shuttle in her simple black uniform. She walked through the ruined colony, looking at the damage, listening to the stories of the survivors, and speaking quietly with Miso about what had happened during the occupation. Miso told her about the 5 days of fear, the rationing of food and water, the sound of Velik boots above the shelter doors, and the terrible silence when the last explosion happened, and no one knew if it meant rescue or death. Yuna listened to every word. She did not interrupt. When Miso finished, Yuna put her hand on the governor's shoulder and held it there for a moment. "Your people are strong," Yuna said. "They survived because you led them well." Miso shook her head. "We survived because you came." Yuna then visited Teho, who had been moved to a proper medical bed on one of the orbiting ships. He was sitting up now, his arm in a cast, his head bandaged, but his eyes were sharp and awake. She stopped him with a raised hand. "None of that," she said. "How are you feeling?" "Like a building fell on me," he said with a weak smile. "Because one did." Yuna sat down beside his bed. "Your signal saved this colony, Teho. If you had not sent it when you did, we would not have arrived in time. The Velik would have dug in too deep to remove." Teho shook his head slowly. "I just pressed a button. You brought 500 ships. The button mattered," Yuna said firmly. "Everything matters." 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. The Council was the closest thing the galaxy had to a governing body. A collection of representatives from over 200 species who met on a massive space station at the center of known space. They discussed trade, borders, disputes, and laws. They had rules about everything, from weapon types to territorial claims. And they had never quite known what to do about humans. The Velik representative demanded that humanity be punished. He stood before the council and called the human response an act of aggression. He said the Reapers were illegal weapons. He said the destruction of the Velik fleet was a crime against galactic peace. He spoke for nearly an hour, his voice rising with each sentence, his 4 eyes wide with righteous anger. Then it was humanity's turn to speak. Admiral Yuna walked to the center of the council chamber. She wore her dress uniform, black, with a single row of silver medals on her chest. She stood straight and still. 500 representatives from hundreds of species watched her in silence. She looked at the Velic representative. Then she looked at the rest of the council. Then she began. My name is Yuna. I am an admiral in the Earth Defense Force. 3 weeks ago, the Velic Empire sent 300 warships to attack a farming colony on the edge of our space. Outpost Hana had no military fleet. It had no advanced weapons. It had 12,000 civilians, farmers, miners, families, children. The Velic destroyed our station, invaded our colony, and trapped our people underground. She paused. The chamber was perfectly silent. Commander Teho, the officer in charge of that station, sent a distress signal as his station fell apart around him. He knew he could not win. He knew he would probably die. But he pressed the button anyway, because he believed that someone would come. She took a slow breath. Someone did. I brought 500 warships to the Hana system. We destroyed the Velic defensive line. We broke their fleet. We drove them away. And we rescued every single civilian in those shelters. All 12,000 of them. Alive. He shrank back in his seat. The Velic representative has called our response aggressive. He has called our weapons illegal. He has asked this council to punish us. She paused again. I have a different suggestion. She turned back to the full council. We did not start this war. We did not ask for it. We did not want it. We were a farming colony with a flag and a dream. The Velic came to our door with 300 warships and thought they could take what was ours, because we were far from home and few in number. Her voice dropped lower, and somehow that made it more powerful. They were wrong, and I stand here today to deliver a simple message to every species, every empire, and every council member in this chamber. Humans come from a death world. Our planet tried to kill us every day for millions of years, and we survived. We survived ice ages, plagues, predators, volcanoes, and each other. We walked out of that fire and into the stars, and we brought that fire with us. She placed both hands on the podium. We do not want war. We want to farm our fields, raise our children, and explore the stars in peace. But if anyone threatens our people again, they will face the same thing the Velic faced. Not anger, not revenge, something worse. They will face the full, focused will of a species that was forged on a world that wanted them dead and decided to live anyway. She straightened up. We did not start this war, but we finished it. And I sincerely hope, for the sake of everyone in this chamber, and everyone they represent, that this is the last lesson the galaxy needs about Earth. She stepped back from the podium. She did not bow. She did not smile. She simply looked at them with those dark, steady eyes, and let the silence do the rest. No one spoke for a long time. The Galactic Council voted that afternoon. The Velic Empire was ordered to pay full reparations for the damage to Outpost Hana. The Velic military was restricted to their home system for 20 years. And a new resolution was passed, unanimously, that no species would attack a human colony again without expecting the full response of the Deathworlders Armada. The resolution had an unofficial name that spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species whispered it to each other in trade ports, on space stations, and in the dark corners of alien bars. They called it the Hana Doctrine, and it said one thing, in simple words that even the youngest species could understand. Do not touch the humans. They remember, and they always come. The stars around Outpost Hana were always quiet. It was a small colony, sitting at the very edge of human space, far from Earth and far from any major fleet. The station floated near a pale blue gas giant, and the colony below it held about 12,000 people. Farmers, miners, engineers, and their families. Simple people living simple lives on the edge of the galaxy. Commander Teho stood at the observation window of the station and looked out at the stars. He was a tall man, with tired eyes and short gray hair. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 20 years, and they had sent him here to watch over this quiet corner of space. Nothing ever happened at Outpost Hana. That was the point. It was supposed to be a retirement post. He took a sip of his coffee and turned back to the control room. A handful of officers sat at their stations, watching screens that showed nothing but empty space. The biggest event of the week had been a cargo ship arriving with medical supplies and fresh food from the inner colonies. "Anything on the scanners?" Teho asked. Lieutenant Boram shook her head without looking up. "Nothing, sir. Same as always." Teho nodded. He walked to his chair and sat down. He thought about the letter he had received from his daughter back on Earth. She wanted him to come home. She said he had been out here long enough. He was thinking about what to write back when the first alarm went off. It was a sharp screaming sound that filled the entire control room. Every screen turned red at the same time. Boram's hands flew across her console, and her face went white. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking, "I'm reading over 300 ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They are forming an attack formation. They are Velik." The room went silent. Every officer stopped breathing for a moment. The Velik were one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. They were tall, thin creatures with pale skin and 4 eyes. They believed that they were the rightful rulers of the stars, and they had been watching humanity expand with growing anger for decades. There had been tensions, there had been warnings, but no one thought they would actually attack. Teho stood up slowly. His coffee cup fell from his hand and shattered on the floor, but he did not notice. He walked to the main screen and stared at the wall of red dots moving toward his station. 300 ships, he whispered. Outpost Hana had 6 defense turrets and 2 old patrol ships. They were not a military base. They were a farming colony with a flag on it. "Sir, what do we do?" Boram asked. Teho closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he opened them, and his voice became hard and steady. "Send a distress signal to Earth Command. Send it on every channel. Tell them the Velik have attacked Outpost Hana with a full invasion fleet." Boram's fingers moved fast. "Signal sent, sir." "Now get me a line to the colony below." The screen flickered, and the face of the colony governor appeared. Her name was Miso, a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and a strong jaw. She saw the look on Teho's face, and her smile disappeared instantly. "Commander, what is happening?" she asked. "Governor, the Velik are here. Over 300 warships. You need to begin emergency evacuation of all civilians into the underground shelters. You have maybe 20 minutes. Miso did not panic. She had grown up on a border colony herself. She knew what danger looked like. "I understand. We will move now." The screen went dark. Teho turned to his officers. "Power up every turret we have. Get those 2 patrol ships in the air. I want every person on this station, armed and ready." An officer named Kite looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, we cannot fight 300 ships. We have nothing." "I know," Teho said quietly. "We are not trying to win. We are trying to buy time. Every minute we hold is another minute for that signal to reach someone who can fight back." The Velik fleet moved closer. On the lead ship, the Velik commander sat in his tall black chair and looked at the tiny human station on his screen. His name was Overlord Dreth, and he had 4 silver marks on his chest that showed his high rank. He smiled, which for a Velik meant pulling back his thin lips to show rows of small sharp teeth. "Is this what humans call a fortress?" he said, and his officers laughed. "1 station, 6 guns. This will be over before our weapons even cool down." His second-in-command, a younger Velik named Preth, leaned forward. "Overlord, the station has sent a transmission, a distress signal, aimed at their inner systems." Dreth waved his long hand. "Let them cry for help. Their nearest fleet is weeks away. By the time anyone responds, we will own this entire sector. The humans spread themselves too thin. That is their weakness. They think they can live everywhere, but they cannot protect everywhere. He pressed a button on his chair. All ships, begin the attack. The sky above the colony turned to fire. Velic warships unleashed bright green energy blasts that slammed into the station's shields. The entire structure shook. Lights flickered. Panels cracked. Tejo grabbed the edge of his console and held on. "Return fire," he shouted. The 6 turrets on the station opened up, sending streams of hot metal into the Velic fleet. 2 Velic ships took hits, and their shields flashed, but they did not fall. It was like throwing stones at an ocean. The 2 patrol ships launched from the station's hangar. They were small, fast ships, each with a crew of 4. They dove into the Velic formation, firing everything they had. One of them managed to hit a Velic cruiser in its engine, and the enemy ship spun out of control and crashed into another. For a brief moment, the human officers cheered. Then the Velic fired back. A dozen green beams hit the first patrol ship at once. It broke apart in a flash of light and was gone. The second ship tried to pull away, but a Velic destroyer locked onto it and fired a single, massive shot that cut it in half. Tejo watched the 2 dots disappear from his screen. 8 people, gone in seconds. He felt a pain in his chest, but he did not let it show on his face. "Shields at 20%, Boram reported, her voice cracking. "Keep firing," Tejo said. The station shook again, harder this time. A ceiling panel fell and crashed to the floor. Sparks flew from a console. One officer screamed as his station exploded in front of him. Kite pulled him away and pressed his hand against the man's bleeding arm. On the colony below, Miso was leading people into the underground shelters. Thousands of men, women, and children ran through the streets, carrying whatever they could hold. Some carried babies, some carried photographs. An old man carried a small dog under his arm. Miso stood at the shelter entrance and counted heads, pushing people inside one by one. "Move, move, keep moving," she shouted over the sound of explosions above them. Back on the station, the shields finally broke. The next Velic blast tore through the outer hull. Air rushed out into space. Emergency doors slammed shut, sealing off entire sections. Tejo knew they had minutes left. He sat down in his chair one last time. He looked at his officers, Boram, Kite, the others. They were scared. They were young. But none of them ran. "It has been an honor," he said simply. Then he pressed the emergency broadcast button one final time and spoke into the microphone. His voice went out across the stars, riding on every frequency, bouncing off every relay station between Hana and Earth. "This is Commander Tejo of Outpost Hana. The Velic Empire has attacked us with a full invasion fleet. Our station is falling. Our colony is under siege. We need help. If anyone is listening, we need help." The station took one final terrible hit. The lights went out. The screens went dark. Outpost Hana fell silent. On the Velic flagship, Overlord Dreth leaned back in his chair and smiled his sharp smile. "Mark it done," he said. "The humans at the border are finished. Send word to the homeworld. The invasion has begun, and our first victory was easy." He truly believed that. He believed that humans were soft creatures from a comfortable world. He believed their expansion was built on luck, not strength. He believed that this war would be short and simple. He was wrong. He was very, very wrong. Because far away, deep in the heart of human space, a woman named Yuna was listening. And when she heard Tejo's final words, something cold and ancient moved behind her dark eyes. She set down the report she had been reading. She stood up from her desk aboard the ISS Iron Tide, the largest warship humanity had ever built. And she gave an order that had not been given in over 50 years.